Okay, my name is Tanya Larkin, and I'm the Superintendent of Schools for Pampa ISD, and I want to thank you for stopping in your busy day to spend some time with us as we talk about our back to school plan and how we're going to start strong and do everything we can to stay safe as we go through this new school year that none of us would have ever imagined we would be doing. Okay, with us today, we have my secretary, Karen Linder. She is fabulous. She's going to be getting people in and out of the room, any kind of technical assistance that you need if you can't hear or you can't see the screen. There's her cell phone number. If you text her a question, she can help you. Karen, would you unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the group?
Hello, I'm Karen Linder. I'm Dr. Larkin's secretary, and I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you, Karen. All right, also with us today is our Family and Community Engagement Coordinator, Jana Williamson. She does a ton of things with our parents in our community. And Jana, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here with you. Look forward to all that you have to share with us.
Thank you, Jana. And then we also have on the chat, they will be answering your questions all through this time, is Dr. Abigail Barton and Miss Abby Hancock. Would you ladies introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. I'm Abigail Barton. I'm Assistant Superintendent. I have 2 children in the district, and I look forward to hearing some of your feedback and answering your questions. Abby may not be on quite yet. She was finishing a session this morning, and then you will see her jump on as we proceed.
That's right. She is teaching some of our first-year teachers, and so there's lots to learn every year. So she will be joining us. Thank you for that, Dr. Barton. And then we have on our list, I've looked at the list of people that are registered for this Zoom meeting, and we have a pretty good representation, again, of parents from elementary, middle school, and high school. So that's good. We ought to be able to get a really good perspective from everyone. So this is just a little funny, but it's also kind of not funny. I saw this and it really kind of speaks to me as a mom. I'm thinking about sending my child to school, and I know there are some things that I'm concerned about, but then having her stay home and doing it, there's some things I'm concerned about with that. And then just overall, the options that we look at what we have, and really we all wanted this to just go away. We wanted this to not be the conversation we were having. But what we've learned through this process is that we've looked at some of our systems and some of the things that we've always done, and we have discovered that there's some things that I truly believe we're going to do better than ever and are going to be more engaging and more exciting and more flexible. So I think there's a silver lining to all of this, and so we're going to talk a little bit more about all of that. I'm going to explain to you a little bit about how all of our decisions are made. We don't just randomly come up with some of this stuff. You can't make up some of this stuff, to be honest with you. But there is a flow of communication, a flow of regulations and governance. And I want to share that with you because I think that'll help you see how the decisions come about. I'm going to share with you a little bit about our survey results. I hope that some of you took the survey. We had a parent survey in July, just a few weeks ago, and then we had a teacher survey at the end of June, and we also did a student survey. But I want to share a couple of those things with you, and then we'll talk about kind of what's coming next, the timeline of things that are happening between now and when school starts, and then the flexibility we're all going to have when school starts. And then give you a chance that if we hadn't already answered your questions after looking at all the plan and through the chat, give you a chance to open the mute button and let's just have a conversation if you still have questions or concerns. All right, here we go. We begin, of course, with the President of the United States and the Center for Disease Control. And as I said in my previous parent sessions, regardless of your political affiliation, this is how that system works, where the Center for Disease Control, especially on a global pandemic level, which we've never experienced before, that's where the ball starts rolling, if you will. And so they set some things into motion, and then that flows down to the governor, Greg Abbott, for Texas. And you know, you've heard from him, you've heard him speak, they've put information out, and he is dealing with all the things that are happening in Texas. And of course, Texas is a very large state. And so a lot of things that we hear about are happening down south, and they haven't been happening so much in the Pampa area or in our county for sure. But with the governor is the Texas Education Agency. And this is the governing institution, organization of all public and charter schools in the entire state of Texas. There are close to 2,000 public and charter schools, so that's a lot of school districts. And this person, Mr. Mike Morath, is in charge of all of the policies, procedures, and codes that schools have to follow. And we have been meeting, superintendents have been meeting with Mr. Morath twice a week all summer, and then during the spring we met daily through Zoom conversations and just getting the guidance and the update. And so that's always been, and things change every day. Literally yesterday we had some changes at 4 o'clock and we've had to go in and make those changes, and that will continue. So that's just that area of flexibility that we're all going to have to continue to strive for. In addition to the state of Texas and the commissioner, we also work closely with the University Interscholastic League. They're out of the University of Texas, and they govern all extracurricular student activities. So band, choir, all of your sports, your academic competitions. So they give guidance about how those things are supposed to be, the do's and the don'ts, eligibility when students have to pass their class to participate. And so they have given guidance on not only what your summer camps could look like, but also what your fall programs. They have not published anything for late fall. So we only have guidance on football, volleyball, cross country, and marching band. They will give us more guidance as we get closer to those events. And then we have Gray County. So we also have to work very closely with the Gray County COVID Task Force. And that is made up of the county judge, the city manager, the mayor, the public information officer, the emergency operations officer, and myself. And we have been meeting a couple of times a week since the spring, and then we've been meeting about weekly in July and August just to stay on our local numbers. And if you're not aware, we are experiencing quite a spike in local positive cases. And so that has also been reflected in our plans. And then we finally get to the school district. And so after all of that information flows through the appropriate channels, we work closely with our leadership team in our school district. We've worked with teachers. We have done staff and student and parent surveys. We even had some of those Zoom meetings. I met with some students on Zoom. I met with some parents on Zoom before we published the plans to get some feedback, and it was very helpful. Last week, we met with our school board and shared all of our plans with them, and that resulted in some tweaking and some changing. And we're doing all this, of course, to get ready to start school. So it's been quite a process, and it will continue to go. So again, thank you for taking your time to be here with us today, because we will answer your questions the best we can. But you're also going to help us think of some things we probably haven't thought of yet. So we really do appreciate that. So I want to dig into the survey a little bit. We had 721 parents participate in this survey, and that represented, as you can see, here are all of our campuses, about 1,300 students. Okay, so that's a little more than a third of our entire student body. What I really liked was that of those 721 parents and 1,300 students, every grade level is pretty well represented here. And so I felt like we were getting some pretty good, authentic feedback. So one of the first questions I asked was just simply about the concerns about coming back to school. And so if you look at this, 35.8% of those 720 parents said they're not concerned. Their student is probably going to go back face to face. They're coming to school. 42% of those 700 parents said they were slightly concerned, but their students are probably still going to go to school. And then 22% of those parents said they have concerns and they're probably going to prefer for their student to go remote. And they have a million reasons why, and that's fine. So we have some pretty interesting mix of how parents were feeling, at least the ones that completed the survey. So that information that we gathered in July gave us some groundwork for our planning. So we also asked about remote learning in general, because even though we may choose face-to-face or remote, we know that if something happens in the state and it gets exacerbated, the problem is bad, that the cases go up, the governor could shut us down again. Or our local situation, our local context changes drastically. We may have to have small periodic closures if we have an outbreak where we have to close a hallway, a campus, or even the district for a few days. So remote learning is not something in the past. It is a part of our future. It is still going to be something we have to be prepared to do at any moment throughout this school year. So we wanted to kind of get a feel for how parents felt about that. So of these parents that did the survey, 44.7% said online remote learning is not their preference, but if it was required, they could make it work. 21.8% said it's not what they want, and if it's required, they would need some support from the school. So that might be a device, it might be Wi-Fi, there may not be anybody at home with the students, and so there's just some things that they would need some help on. 14.6% said remote is an option, but we really still need some help making that happen. And then 19% said remote learning is an option and we're good. We're good to go. We can make this work today. So that also helped us think about our planning. So we also asked questions specifically about disinfection, cleaning, distancing, and just keeping everybody safe. So the first question was about screening of students and staff. Now, at the time of this survey, the Texas Education Agency promoted, they gave us guidelines for summer school. And in summer school, it included taking temperatures of every student and every staff member every day. That guidance has since changed since they've learned a little bit more about COVID and that the children are not tending to show the fever as the telltale sign. And sometimes children have fever throughout the day for different reasons. Sometimes their temperature would be up if they were just running or playing. And so at this time, we just asked, how do you feel about that? So 66% of the parents that took the survey agreed with some screening. 23% could go either way. They could be for it or against it. They were just kind of indifferent to it. And 10% were in disagreement with doing daily screening. I will tell you that, and we'll get to this in the plan, that our staff they will self-screen every day. They'll take their own temperature, they'll fill out a form to make sure that none of our staff come to work with those symptoms or feeling ill. For what we're doing, we're parents, of course we have 3,500 kids, we're asking parents to screen their own children and just not send them to school if they're showing those symptoms, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that in just a minute. All right, another question we asked was about hand sanitizer and hand washing. Obviously, we had a lot of agreement on this one. 88% agreed that that's something we should do during school. 10% could go either way. And 1.8% were in disagreement with that. They disagreed with that. Social distancing, we're calling it physical distancing because we don't socially distance, but we do and don't have the square footage in some of our classrooms. So full disclosure, we may not have them being apart that long. Being able to do that in the classrooms. So of the survey, we had 49% agree, 30% could go either way, and 20% disagreed. I took my camera off because I was getting an intermittent internet issue, so maybe that'll help a little bit. So I'm still here, you just may not be able to see me. All right, and this again is in common areas. So the first question was in classrooms, and this one is in cafeterias, gymnasiums, and playgrounds and so forth. Again, 45.9% agreed, 31% could go either way, and 22% disagreed. So masks, we get to face coverings. This seems to be a very hot topic for everyone. And some people are basing their opinion in the medical research. Some people are basing their opinion on their preference of how uncomfortable they are, how much of an inconvenience it is. And some people are basing their opinion on their political affiliation. It doesn't really matter where your beliefs come from. They're your beliefs, and we totally respect those. However, we are following CDC guidelines, and we are going to do everything we can to keep kids safe. The other part of that is quarantining. So let me tell you a little bit about this. The survey lets us know that we're kind of split on this, and that doesn't surprise me at all. We still had 39 agree, 25, 26 could go either way, and then 30%, around 35% disagreed. When we're talking about face coverings, the governor said that 10 and under do not have to wear them, but the CDC recommends anybody 2 years or older to wear them if you're going to be within closer than 6 feet of each other. Obviously, when we put 3,500 students and 400 staff in 6 buildings, we're going to be together. We're going to be close. And so to keep our teachers and our students safe, we're going to wear masks. Now, there are going to be frequent times throughout the day they'll be able to remove those face coverings. And when we say face coverings, there's so many different options out there. The key to this is that it covers their mouth and their nose. We don't want to cover their eyes because we want them to be able to see, obviously. So there are some people who have caps with the visors that come down, the clear plastic shield that covers their mouth and their nose. Those will be allowed. Some people have the ones that attach, they just kind of wear it as a halo hat. Some have those that come around the bottom of the chin. Some wear gaiters, some are wearing masks. And some people are having a lot of fun with it. I've seen some with colleges on there, with their favorite teams. Some of them have crazy colors and prints, and people are having fun with that, and that's great. What we do ask is that we be mindful that nothing on those masks breaks our dress code, just like we would with t-shirts or their shirts that they would wear. So nothing offensive or nothing that has drugs, alcohol, or violence and those kind of things. So that's just kind of the norm. And we can talk more about face coverings in just a minute. So another question we asked was about frequently cleaning. And we do have a very aggressive plan for not only our custodians to clean restrooms and touch points in classrooms and cafeterias frequently throughout the day, but also every student and teacher are also going to have things to where they can clean their own space frequently throughout the day. Just because we have different, especially at the secondary level, we have different kids moving into different classrooms, and that's going to be critical. But at the elementary, especially the little bitties, they have a bad habit of putting things in their mouth and touching things a lot. And so we want to make sure we clean as many things as we possibly can. And there was a lot of agreement that this makes sense to do. We also surveyed our teachers, and it was interesting that of that survey, this was done in late June, we had about close to 300 of our staff took the survey, and 90% of those were our classroom and support teachers. And so that gives me a lot of insight into where they're feeling about this too. And so we had 43.8% said they're not concerned. So almost half. And I think a lot of that's because they just want to get back with their kids. They miss their kids, they haven't seen them in months, and they're anxious to get back to school. Another 43.8, so almost another half, they're slightly to moderately concerned. So, I mean, that's fair. There's some things to be concerned about. They're exposed to lots of kids every day. And then we had 12% that had huge concerns. They have many concerns. And some of these might be our teachers that have compromised immunity. We have some that are going through cancer treatments, that have horrible lung issues. And so obviously, or they have spouses or their own children. So they're just like you, they're parents. When they're looking at this, they're also parents. And so our teachers are all over the place as with this too. But I think there's more feeling that people just want to get back to school. Okay, before we look at the plan, I want to go over the timeline a little bit. The last couple of weeks, of course, the whole summer, we've been really busy gathering input, getting guidance, looking at the research, and developing these plans. So we've rolled those out this week. We published those Monday afternoon, and we had, that was yesterday, we had a parent meeting last night, and we're meeting with you today. We'll have another parent meeting tomorrow, and if there's more interest, we'll do some more next week. We'll put these videos out there, but this week is really just getting the plan out, getting the communication out, providing the clarity for parents before they know what option they're choosing for their kids. And so this week we're asking people to be informed and make those commitment forms. Make that commitment of whether you want your child to go face-to-face or virtual by August the 9th. So that would be Sunday. And we're doing that because we have to know what we're planning for. We have to know how many students are going to be in our buildings, how many are in each classes, and how many we're going to have remotely, so we can just, our teachers can plan for all of the logistics that changes. We are asking that this commitment be a 6-week commitment. And obviously that's because of the grading period, but also we just can't have 3,500 kids changing how they want to go to school every day. That's just logistically impossible to manage and do safely. So we're asking for this commitment to be 6 weeks. And that's why we want to make sure there's clarity behind what you're committing to. So then next week we have training for our teachers. Many of our teachers have already been engaged in tons of training since July, but they all come back next week. There'll be a lot of training. There'll be a lot of planning and lesson building in our learning management system. And we'll start our device distribution plans, because every student will be receiving a device. And we're going to talk about some of those details. Then the next week we continue planning, but we will be hosting parent and student orientation sessions. So they'll be learning about how to do the learning management system, how to get on through the technology, what all the back to school plans are for cleanliness, for disinfecting, and just how the logistics are on in the classrooms and in the hallways. And then the first day of school, August the 24th. Remember, we changed the first day of school from the 19th to the 24th, and this was simply just to give us a little more time to help our teachers get ready. Like I said, guidance is changing every day. We know that that's not going to stop, and we're going to start school on the 24th, ready or not, but we're going to be far more ready than we would have been, and so we appreciate your flexibility on that. Okay, let's look at, if you go to our website, and there's a tab here that says Back to School Plan. If you click on that, it will take you to this Back to School landing page. And we have just I have an article here that I just talked about, kind of the 5 biggest things that people talk to me about. The learning options, face coverings, extracurricular activities, and what we're doing for cleanliness, and then just how school is happening. We also have tabs here for athletics, COVID-19 reporting. This is what happens when somebody, a student or a staff member or a parent of a student or someone in the home is tested positive for COVID. So then that starts tracing, that starts conversations, that starts quarantining different options. And that's where those face coverings are so important, because if you have face coverings on, you're very much less likely to be quarantined. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Our meal services, technology, transportation, we're going to be adding to this as we go. So know where this page is and visit it often. Also over here on our page is a registration button, and that's where you will go. You click that, it'll take you to our registration landing page. If you're a returning student, if your children have been in our school system, this is the column that shows you what you need to do. So you'll need to submit your commitment form, and of course read the back to school plan, and then also submit your annual student forms. So here those forms are. So here's the commitment form. You click on that. It's real quick, but don't do that until you've read the plan. Okay, and we're going over that today. This is just for new students to the district, so if you've been in our system before, you don't need to do that. But then every student, whether you're new or you've been here, has to do these forms, and this is just an annual thing that we all have to do. We've done it in the past, and we'll continue to do that. So this is a very important page, and then our calendar, you click on there and it'll take you to our new calendar. Nothing else has changed in the calendar right now except the first day of school. And so that will only be updated as if we have to have closures periodically throughout the school. Okay, so when you click right here, it says Back to School Plan, and it will bring you to a page that looks like this. And it is lengthy. It's over 20 pages long, but on the website, when you go back over here, there's a frequently asked questions. Most of the plan is presented in those frequently asked questions as questions and answers. So that's a great place to start when you want to find out what's going on. So, and we're adding to those every day, but we're going to start with the plan. All right, so all of this table of contents that you see here all of these different features that are here, some of those are on tabs on the website, as you see, transportation, so forth, and some are embedded in this plan, but they're all available for you to view on the website. So a lot of the things in this plan, a lot of the language is from the CDC, it's from the Texas Education Agency, it's from the governor's orders. So we cut and paste those in here, and then we kind of explain what that looks like for us in Pampa. So here it is where we talk about the face coverings, that everybody's going to be required to do that. And the paramount reason for that is because of if and when we have positive cases, and I think it would be naive to think that we won't have any at some point. We have them now and we haven't even started school yet. That the quarantining questions are here. It's very important. Otherwise, if there's no mask involved and you are exposed to someone who tested positive, or close to someone who was exposed, your student may be isolated, quarantined, if you will, for up to 14 days. And that is a long time to be out of school. So we want to wear those face coverings to prevent that as much as possible, not only for our staff, but our students. And that's also the reason why we're using our learning management system, because at any moment, any one of us could become a virtual worker or a virtual student. We talk about the 6 feet distance here, and this is again transparency. Sometimes it's just not going to be possible. And so that's again when the face coverings are so important. For drinking water, it is law that is required by law that we provide our students with access to water. Obviously, water fountains are a big place for germ concerns and cross-contamination. So we are not going to allow our students to use the water fountains as they have traditionally. We're putting bottle filling stations in all of the campuses. So we encourage you to send your student with a refillable container that they can do that with. But if that's not something you want to do or they forget it, it's fine. We're going to have those little Dixie cups available for students to get drinks of water if they need it. So they're going to be able to drink water, but it's just going to look a little bit different. Okay, restroom breaks. Again, it's very different at every grade level. Elementary, they usually take more procedural restroom breaks as a class. We're going to limit the number of students in those restrooms. At secondary, we're going to, they're at the age where they're going to ask them to wear their face coverings and to distance as much as possible. And that is really just the best we can do when we have that many students with, and we don't want to treat them like small children and make them go to class and go to the restroom in line. That's something that is inappropriate for their age. Okay, so we're moving on to PPE equipment. We're really encouraging everyone to provide their own. We have equipment that we receive from the state of Texas, from the Texas Education Agency. We have some face coverings. We have tons of hand sanitizer. We will provide hand sanitizer we have dispensers, we have pumps in the classrooms, but your student may prefer their own. So you can bring your own. And same thing with your face coverings. If your student does not have one or they forget it, we will provide those as long as we have them in stock. We've purchased some ourselves. Like I said, we've received some, but most people are wanting to do their own because they have a particular style that they prefer. Some want the masks, some want the gaiters, some want the shields. So your child will probably be more comfortable if they're in something that they choose and it is something that they like. But we will be able to provide those if needed. Again, washing hands regularly. This is something that will not only encourage, we will also train the students on the proper way to wash your hands to make sure that the germs are gone. And we're going to do that at every level. And then of course, just your basic things about preventing sickness, the spread of sickness, coughing, sneezing, how to do that. Of course, if you're wearing a face covering, you've contained that. But still, people still need to learn how to do that without spreading germs. Health screenings. Like I said, our staff will screen every day. We will keep record of that just to make sure that we don't have anybody that's working coming into our buildings that has an illness. We're asking parents to screen their children and to not send them if they have those symptoms or if they are sick. We've always asked this, but I think, and I'm guilty of this myself, I think in the past, we've all just thought, well, it's allergies, and it may be. You've got to know your body, you've got to know your child's body. And so we're asking that you really think about that and make that consideration before you bring them to school. And there's options to where the virtual learning through our learning management system, which all students will be doing, they won't get behind in class if they stay home. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. I think you're going to like that feature. So just campus operations, obviously, hand sanitizing everywhere. Entrances and exits are going to be changed up a little bit. So drop off and pick up at the elementary is going to look a little bit different, and you'll get that communication during your parent orientation on the campuses the week before school starts. And the point of that is to make sure we don't have lots of groups of kids and people in small areas gathering. And thinking about gatherings, we will not have any large student gatherings like assemblies, indoors, anything like that for the first few weeks of school. After we get school started and things are going and we see if they're going well, we may open some things up a little bit, but we don't want to start big and then get outbreaks and have to close it down. We want to start very controlled, very carefully, very cautiously, and then move from that point. So the beginning of school, we will not be having any large assemblies. So the parent meetings that we have at the beginning for orientation will be small group rotations. During the day, restrooms, classrooms, everything will be disinfected frequently. And I think I mentioned that, not only by our staff, but also our custodians, but also our teachers and our students. Plexiglass. I had a parent ask me about plexiglass. They were under the impression that their student was going to be kind of barricaded in by this plexiglass shield on their desk. And you've seen those on the internet, you've seen those on Facebook. That's not what we're doing. We do have plexiglass put up in like our reception areas, our cafeteria cashiers, our serving lines in our cafeterias, but we do not have them in the classroom at the student's desk or table. If they're wearing their face coverings, then that should take care of that. Now, there are some programs, some of our special education programs that have more plexiglass dividers, but that's when the student and the teacher have to be really close, and our teachers will be wearing face coverings and gloves also in those situations. Now, for guided reading tables in our kinder and first grade classrooms, in our primary classrooms, our guided reading tables are going to have more distancing and some plexiglass shields, but that's because again, we're much closer and we need to be able to see the formation of the words to teach our phonics. Learning to read and write is so critical at that primary level that we feel like that's an important thing to do. So we're taking some extra precautions there, but the students aren't back there but more than 20, 30 minutes at a time. This is a great point for me to share with you, just a philosophical opinion and a professional opinion. Now, if you want to keep your child home because of whatever reason you absolutely have the right to do that, and we will do our very best to serve you and your child. But if your child is a young learner, pre-K, K1, even 2 for some students, and they're not reading and writing on level, I highly encourage you to send them to school. And that is because learning those basic foundational skills of reading and writing is just so important to get that really strong, and that in the moment learning that our trained reading teachers can do is just very difficult to translate online. We can do it, and it's going to need a lot of help from the caregiver or the learning coach or the parent at home. We can do it. But if you're worried about that at all, then I would have you really think about that. And again, that's not a requirement, that's just a professional opinion. All right, I think most of this we've already gone to, and that gets us into the learning environments. So we have the desks and tables. We're going to try to spread those apart as much as possible. We've asked our staff to remove anything in the classroom that can't be disinfected quickly daily. So if they've got lots of warm fuzzy pillows and bean bags and all those we can't disinfect those well every day. And we can't ensure that germs won't be cross-contaminated there. So we've asked them to remove those. And some of that is, okay, that's fine. And some of it is a little more challenging, especially in some of our young primary grade levels, their centers and so forth. So we're really making, cognitive decisions about what we're keeping in our rooms and why, and making sure everything can be cleaned quickly and frequently. talked about most of this. Supplies, this is one reason why we're asking every student to carry a backpack or some kind of desk sack or something, satchel or some kind, that they have their own supplies in, because we will not be sharing supplies. Again, that's just lots of cross-contamination. So they'll have their own supplies, they'll have their own device, and they'll need to have those with them every day and take them home every day. The reason we're having you take them home every day, one, we want to be able to disinfect the classroom, and we don't want a lot of extra stuff in there. Number two, overnight, something could happen and we would have to be quarantined or close school the next day. And we want you to be able to have that learning device there. You have your supplies, you're ready to go. So we're constantly ready to have learning happen no matter what's going on in the world around us. So that's the rationale for that. A big question that keeps coming up is recess, playtime. I highlighted this because we fundamentally know that this is a critical part of that whole child well-being. They need to be able to play. And one of the student meetings that I had, a student asked about being able to play tag. And so obviously they're touching each other when they play tag. Well, the students very quickly came up with some ideas where they could still play, but not have to touch each other physically with their hands. And so the kids are so resilient. I was so inspired by their quick willingness to find a way to still get to do something we've always liked to do. It just looks different. And so we have a lot to learn, and we'll learn those things from them, I feel certain of. So this one's very important. Breakfast, lunch. Okay, obviously getting all of the kids in the cafeteria the way we normally have is putting too many bodies in there too close together. So those things will change a little bit. Yes, they will eat breakfast and lunch, and many will eat them in the cafeteria. Some will eat their meals in the classroom. It's just going to depend on the campus and the number of students in each class and the rotations that they make. You will learn that from your campus after we find out for sure how many students are actually coming to school and how many are staying home. However, if you are a virtual student and you want your children to stay home, but you still want to purchase meals or you qualify for free and reduced lunch, we still will provide meals for your children. You will, however, have to pick those up at the campus. The Texas Department of Agriculture controls and governs the way we prepare our meals in public schools. And so being able to do that requires that you pick it up at the home campus. And if you're interested in that, just contact the school and we will make sure that's ready for you to pick up every day. Transportation, we are encouraging parents to bring their kids to school, but we will still provide transportation if you qualify, which is 2 miles away from your campus. Any area around 2 miles radius, if you're further than that, you qualify for transportation. And if you do, we just want to make sure that everyone knows that face coverings will be required by all individuals on the bus, as adults and students, the entire time they're on the bus. And this is, again, goes back to that distancing. We can't distance kids 6 feet apart on a bus. We wouldn't be able to get more than 10 kids on a bus, and that's not logistically possible with our busing or our drivers, and especially not time. So if your students ride the bus, that's perfectly great. They're just going to need to wear a face covering the whole time they're on there. Visitors, you know, we love having our parents on our campuses. We love having our community on our campuses, and we have done a lot of work in Pampa to build that partnership with our community and our parents. And so this saddens my heart a little bit, but I know why we're doing it. And it is to keep that exposure risk down. So during this first of this year, while we're still figuring all this out, we're restricting visitors to the campus who are not essential to school operations. And so that means that when sometimes parents come up and they bring lunch, or they bring the grandma to have lunch, or we won't be allowing anyone to come, no visitors to come for breakfast or lunch times. And we're not going to allow people to bring stuff and drop it off, just as we've done before. So your student will need to bring their lunch with them, or they'll need to eat at school. And this again is to limit that cross-contamination. Now, if you need to be there for a meeting, a parent-teacher meeting that you need to be face-to-face, an ARD meeting, and you really need to be there and you are a critical part of what's happening, then we will ask you to wear a mask or a face covering. We will ask you to take your temperature and do a screening protocol, and then of course we'll let you in. But again, we're only going to do that when it is absolutely necessary. Okay, the isolation procedures. I hate the word isolation, but it is in line with the CDC, and it is really about, so you screen your child in the morning, they come to school, they're fine, they go to recess, they eat lunch, or their stomach gets upset and they start showing symptoms. They'll immediately be sent to the nurse's office, and the nurse will triage their symptoms and communicate with you if there is concern that they may need to go home, they may need to be, we recommend testing and so forth. So we are having a place in our nurses areas and in our front offices where if your student has those symptoms, we will put them in a place where they won't be alone, they won't be isolated as far as being unobserved, they won't be unattended. Somebody will be able to keep eyes on them to make sure they're safe and they won't feel alone. But they also won't be able to spread germs to other people. So we're looking at some clear shower curtains and things like that to where the student can be isolated for germs, but not left alone. We want to make sure you're clear on that. And then all of this section is from the CDC on when they can come back to school. And a lot of that has to do with how long between their symptoms. Let's see, all of that is basically just the way it has to be from the CDC. Our clinic procedures, this talks about our nurses stations. We also have telehealth, telemedicine opportunities where when you're filling out that back to school packet for all parents, there's a telehealth, telemedicine option in there. So if you're interested in that, fill out that packet and let us know. Notifications. If we have a positive case, if a student is positive, if a teacher is positive, if a custodian is positive, anybody, when school starts, we have a positive case, you will be notified through our communication systems, which will be through email, Remind, and so forth. We will not, of course, tell you who, but if your child or you, if you're a staff member, was in close contact or had the possibility of being in close contact with that person, we will follow up with you with more detail and ask more questions about how long you were in contact, were you wearing a face shield, to determine who needs to be quarantined and for how long. But we will always notify people that it's happened. And so I anticipate lots of notifications just because I think we're over, the last time I looked, we had over 60 something positive cases in Pampa right now that are still active, and we've been spiking, kind of moving in the wrong direction. So when we start school, the likelihood of some of that coming to school, we hope that doesn't happen, but I also don't want to be naive. So we want to be mindful to do our very best to keep that quarantining as limited as possible. And again, that face covering is important. Here are the symptoms. The symptoms keep changing. They changed yesterday after we got off the phone with the commissioner. And so we've updated some of that information. And as they're learning more about COVID, they're communicating more. And so some things have changed, some things have been consistent, and there are some things we still don't know yet. And that's just the reality of our situation. Okay, the definition of close contact, that is more about making sure that face shield is on, and that will limit that mandatory quarantining if you're not sick and you weren't really around anybody that was sick. Here are some special guidelines for our athletic departments. Again, there's links to TEA and UIL. Those are the governing places that let us know all the different details for athletics. It's important to know that the students need to wear face coverings in the locker rooms. That is a UIL rule. They must do that, but they don't have to wear them when they're playing. And I think that's a critical distinction. Also, they'll have to wear them the entire time they're on a bus, traveling to another school, playing in another school. And we also are working very closely with the schools that we go to make sure that they've got, their locker rooms are clean, that they've got procedures in place, and they're checking with us to make sure that we're taking care of their kids when they come here as well. Here's some information about our fine arts. Choir and band have been hit pretty hard with the restrictions because they're literally blowing air into instruments or singing, and just to be honest with you, spit is flying through the air. And so lots of protocols to make sure that students are safe in our choir and our band halls. They will also be required to wear shields to stop that from happening. That way you can still hear them. Of course, with instruments, they can't do that. So they're working on distancing as well. There's some more about our arts. This is just our daily operational adjustments. This lets you know, it's kind of a teacher checklist and a staff checklist on these are the things we're making sure is happening every day to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep everybody safe, but still be able to have school. And again, like I said, we're still doing everything we've always done. It just looks a little bit different. Right. This again is some more information about once someone is quarantined or once someone is a positive case, how they get to come back to school. And all this information is in there. Okay, the instructional delivery models, this is the big difference between last spring and how we're moving forward. So in the spring, when the governor shut us down at spring break and we did not come back to school, and we distributed all of these devices and we just started school, that everybody did a great job. I was so extremely proud of our staff and our parents and our kids for just being resilient and getting through that. And we had some really good things, and there were a lot of good silver linings from that. However, that was not a long-term solution to ensure that students are learning what they need to be learning at their grade level so they can progress through the curriculum and get to a point of graduation. We can't just go 2 or 3, a year or 2 years without kids learning what they need to learn. That will set them up for failure for a long time, and we just can't have that. And so we've worked all summer long to create systems now that whether you are face-to-face or you are at home, whether we're quarantined, whether we're having school or not having school, students can be learning at high levels with quality instructional materials from their teachers. So every student will have a device, and every student will be learning through a learning management system. And I want to explain this. This is this part that I'm talking about, and this is such a critical thing to understand. This is what's very different too from the spring. So we're having everyone learn in a learning management system for these 4 reasons. 1, providing alignment and equity for all the learning materials, the assignments, and the grading. It's the only way to do that, to make sure that every kid, whether you're at home or at school, is getting the same opportunities. And we're even putting some things in place to prevent, just to say what it is, to prevent cheating when they're online. And that's, kids are pretty creative. They find lots of ways to do that. So we're working on some systems to be able to make sure that that's not happening, because especially when you get to high school, those grade point averages, when you're competing for the top 10% or you're competing for scholarships, those grades matter, and we want to be able to say that we feel like there's been some fidelity in how that's been done. Number 2, we want to prevent that disruption. So if they're quarantined or they get sick, then they won't be missing out and getting behind, because it's very frustrating for your student when they get behind and they're missing out on what's going on in the classroom. Number 3, this is kind of just an obvious logistical thing. The LMS is digital, so our textbooks are there, the assignments are there, students will submit assignments there. We don't want a lot of passing papers in and out, passing books in and out, touching lots of stuff. That just exacerbates the cross-contamination problem. So in class, our teachers are still going to be teaching, they're still going to be doing activities, but they will look different. And at home, there'll be comparable experiences in the learning management system, so whether they're home or at school. And once we get into it, you'll start recognizing what that looks like. And then, of course, just the practicality. Our teachers cannot plan for 2 separate worlds. This is the best that we could come up with, and I've talked to a lot of other districts. They're doing the same thing, and they're recommending that At any moment, our schools could shut down or your student would be quarantined for 14 days. The best way to make sure that they're still learning and that they feel comfortable learning is that every day they're engaging in that learning management system no matter where they're at. This is better for teachers so they can plan really good lessons, but it's also better for students because they're getting that great learning from their teacher no matter where they're at. Okay, schedules, this is another big thing, and I'm gonna go to, I think it's in here. Yeah, this kind of talks a little bit about how virtual and in-person is similar and different, and there aren't a lot of differences other than just geography, but right here is a big difference. So if you're in person, you get that immediate teacher interaction. There's that immediate real-time Q&A. If you're not, if you're at home, it's obviously delayed. So what that means is that student may have a question, so they might email the teacher, or they might put something in the discussion board, or the teacher might pose a question to the class and everybody interacts through the discussion board. Now, daily, there will be opportunities for live interaction through a Zoom, and those schedules are being set up for every grade level for all the content areas, and those will be published for you on our website when school starts. So there will be a place, a time every day that you could go and say you're a second grader and you have a question about something, then at 10 o'clock that day, and that's not the right time, but I'm just making 10 o'clock, you'll get on a live meeting just like we are right now and be able to have a conversation with a teacher that knows what's going on. So that's kind of one of the big differences. Another big difference is the need for a supervised oversight by a learning coach at home. Now, this depends on the age level and the self-discipline of your child. So if they're a second grader, they may not be able to navigate their way through everything all day alone. Somebody may have to be there to make sure that they're doing it and getting on, and if they need help. It's just like we would anytime else. If you've got a 15-year-old, they may be competent to do it all, but they may not get out of bed till noon unless somebody is there to make sure they do that. So you have to know your own kids. You have to know where their level of discipline is, and then just their capacity. So you'll have to make those decisions based on your own children. Just for me, I had one child that probably could have done this on their own since the time they were 8, and I have one that probably is still going to need some help even after they get to college. So it just depends. You've got to know your own kids. All right. And again, changes can happen. We don't know what's going to happen. So we're preparing for all the possibilities, but flexibility is the name of the game for sure. All right, so for virtual learning, I think we kind of talked a little bit about some of the similarities and some of the differences, but another big difference is that in the spring, we would put out assignments and a student might be able to do all of their homework in 2 days and then not have to do anything for the next 5 days. That's not how this is going to work now. Now, they have to engage every day with every subject. So if I'm a junior high, I'm a 6th grader, and I have 7 class periods. I will be registered in 7 class periods just like every other 6th grader. I'll have math, I'll have English, I'll have social studies, I'll have science, and I'll have all these different things going on. And so during the day, it doesn't matter when I do it in that 24-hour period, but I only have 24 hours. I have to click into each one of those classes and engage in that content to be counted present. So that's completely different than what we did in the spring. So if you're thinking about virtual, that's what you need to understand, is that your student is going to have to be, now the homework in class may be planned for 45 minutes, but your student might get it done in 20, and that's fine, but they still have to do it daily. But on the flip side of this, you might be in math class, and for math class, it's scheduled for 45 minutes, but they may have homework. For your child, it may take them 90 minutes to get it done, but that's okay. So there's that kind of flexibility, but you have to go into every class every day and engage in the content to be present. Big distinction between the two. So as you're making that option, please keep that in mind. This just talks a little bit about our learning management system and really talks about how those virtual support sessions are going to be available every day. We're working on which teachers are going to be assigned to do that and when it's going to be built in the day. But until we know how many we're talking about, that's hard to plan for. So as soon as all of our parents sign up this week, we can get those plans out. Technology, now here is something that we're changing. This says a $20 fee. We're not charging a $20 fee. This was a change that was made on Tuesday of this week. Most districts were charging a $40 fee for their devices and insurance. They've changed the rules now, and I see why, because you have to have a device to go to school now. So there is no upfront fee for everybody, but there will be a fee if damages, lost, or stolen, it happens, just like for library books or textbooks. You know, I remember years ago when I was a student, we had a car wreck and my backpack and all my books were destroyed. Well, we had to pay to replace those books. It's the same concept. It's just for a technology device now. We're working on a list of repairs and costs to put that on the website so you will know what you're looking at. It's the same thing with library books, any of those kind of things. So the same concept, just a little bit different because we're talking about a device. So that's going to go away. Social, emotional, mental supports, you know, that has been a big conversation ever since COVID came around because many of our students, well, let me just put it this way, some of our students and some of our staff thrived in the virtual environment. They loved the flexibility, they loved being able to do what they wanted to do when they wanted to do it. But for many of our staff and many of our students, it was a time of isolation. It was not a good experience. They felt alone, or they weren't in a good situation. They weren't safe, or there wasn't food in the home. And so there are lots of reasons why this has always been a concern of ours, but we're going to make sure that any student or staff member that needs someone to talk to, they need some help, any kind of support system, that's there. So we encourage you, whether you're virtual or face-to-face, to reach out to your counselor's office on your campus, and we want to help with that. Okay, communication, like I said earlier, it is always important, but it is super critical now with all these changes going on. So all of our teachers are migrating to a system called Remind. It provides for one-way communication, but also private two-way communication, but it records all of the communication. And so this is a protection for your student and for our staff. So all that communication is transparent. So that's important for everyone. We'll continue to operate through social media, through the website, and through the learning management system itself. There are applications. There's a parent app and a student app for Canvas that you can put on your phone so you can communicate that way. You can see what your kids are doing. But there's so many different ways that we're going to need to be able to communicate. But Remind will be one that all staff will use to communicate with all parents and students. Now, you will need to sign up for that. It won't happen automatically. It's real easy to do, but you'll have to do that. And so those Remind codes will be published as we're doing those parent orientation meetings as we get closer to school starting. And then we get into the frequently asked questions. And like I said, this is a great place to start because it's in that Q&A format. So I really like that. I think it's insight, it gives you a lot of insight. And if you want more details, you can go back into the plan. So there's a lot of information here. But that's a really good place to start. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And at this point, I know that we've been answering lots of questions in the chat, but now at this point, we're available to open the floor if you have additional questions or you want some clarity around something. Anything out there that's still on your mind, just unmute yourself and chime in.
Dr. Larkin, this is Elizabeth McClatchy. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. So I noticed that you said on there that technology, that you wouldn't be using private devices, and that's understandable. But I've had problems with my children in the past being able to access the content that the teachers have provided because it has a video or something that isn't allowable. And the process of getting that approved takes too long to be able to get their work done. What are we going to do about that kind of thing? is
Yeah,
their plan.
and I think that's some teachers would echo that frustration as well.
Sure.
Part of that is our protection system, our firewall, all the things we have to do to protect kids from bad content. And so what we're asking our teachers to do, part of that's going to be fixed through the learning management system,
Okay.
because it adds another layer of protection. And we're also providing more videos that are from our textbook provider, so they're not just something random off of YouTube or something like that. So I
Okay.
think that will help some of the problem, but we're still asking our teachers to communicate with our technology department anytime they want to use any video, any link that they want to embed into their lessons. They just need to send that to our tech department and get that whitelisted. And what
Okay.
that means is they just click that link in there, and it does a quick check to make sure that where we're sending our kids isn't a place that will have an ad that pops up that's going to be inappropriate.
Right.
So it's kind of that balance between protection, but enough flexibility that we can actually do what we want to do.
Right.
So
Right.
we haven't figured out a seamless, perfect way yet, but we're getting better.
No, I understand. Thank you so much.
You bet. That's a great question. Any other questions? I see in the chat there's a question on high school being open or closed for lunch. Right now, it will remain as it always has been. One reason we don't want to put all the kids in the cafeteria together, because that's putting too many kids together. That kind of defeats the purpose. But we are going to ask that if they leave campus, just like we have always asked, obviously that they, be safe when they do so, but we're going to ask them to use sanitizer when they re-enter the building and continue to use their face coverings once they come back in the building. If that changes, we will let everybody know, but right now that's the plan. Anything else?
I have a question, Dr. Larkin.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I have a granddaughter that will be going to pre-K.
Mhm.
How will the centers look, or are they going to still have centers?
Okay. Yes, the little bitties are turning out to be the most difficult to figure out a way to do this safely, but in a place they always also learn. So to be honest with you, we are still trying seeing what works. The best thing that we can do in those centers is to make sure that it's all stuff that can be disinfected very frequently, and also teaching the littles, because it's funny because my daughter was babysitting our nieces and our nephew, and they range from 4 to 9, and I said, hey, do me a favor, because she loves to play teacher with them, and so she was teaching them how to disinfect things, and they were practicing on, okay, now pick the green things and disinfect, pick the blue things, and so they were learning while they were still disinfecting. And so I think we can figure this out, but I think it's going to take some trial and error, just to be completely honest with you. We want them to still have center activities, because that's where their development is. That's where they learn through that play. It's
And
just
they need that social skills.
yes, they've got to
What I
have those. It's
Yes.
just going to look different. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's the honest truth. That's where we're at with this.
It's very hands-on. I mean, they
Yeah.
hug, they
They are.
hold hands.
Right.
And one of my concerns is, are they going to be allowed to be physical with their friends?
Yeah, and I think we go back to that. Yes, we know that they love to high five, they love to fist bump, and so there's alternative ways we can teach them. But there's also ways that if you really just want to do that, make sure you have a face covering and you use that hand sanitizer before and after. So that, like I said, we can still do great things. It's just going to be a little bit different. And it's funny how we've been having lots of trainings the last week or so, and we've had our face coverings on. And one day I was sitting there in my office by myself with my face covering on, and I forgot I had it on. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't think I would ever get used to this, but I did. And then there are days where I'm like, oh, I can't even find my face covering. So it's going to take us all a little bit of time. But you're right, that social interaction, that affection, that just the part that makes the young people grow and develop in a healthy way, we want to preserve as much of that as possible. And so we just got to make sure that we put that filter on of, okay, we can do this, but how does it need to look? Versus, oh, we can't do that. So that's kind of the mindset, I think. All right, any other questions?
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. This is MJ Brown, and I have a question about, we went ahead and got Chromebooks ourselves and are planning on distance learning the first 6 weeks.
Okay, that's great.
What I wanted to know is, since we have our individual Chromebooks, can we use those, or is it needed that we use the school ones? Like, how would you like us to work with that?
Okay, that's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking that. Our preference is that you use our device, but you can use your own. But let me tell you the difference. So our devices will already come pre-packaged, that when you turn it on and the kids get in, there's going to be a screen that's prompted with all of the apps and everything they're going to need. So it's all right there. And as long as they're using our device, all of those safety systems are put into place for the protections for online. And so that's going to be the real difference, is that you might come across some more stumbling blocks about getting to the stuff you need to get to. And so it's just probably more about convenience and a little bit more about, depends on what protections you put on your own children and your own network that you're working off of. So that's really the differences. So it's really just a preference on our part, because it'll just be easier. But you can absolutely use your own at your own home. Now, if they're coming to school, we have to have them on our devices just because of our security system. So does that answer your question? Okay, great.
I have one more.
Sure, no problem. That's what this is for.
I will have a child in 6th grade, and I think I've communicated with the teachers, but I just want to make sure through you that he'll be special ed, and his day will be totally different, as far as you're saying, different classes and electives, but the teachers will let me know that, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, and differentiation, anything that needs to be done specifically for your child, those supports will be put in place in their lessons.
Right. Okay.
Yes, and just keep that communication open. If you have a question or something's not working, reach out. Don't hesitate.
Good.
Okay?
All right. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, I saw a question in the chat about extracurricular activities. Yes, it doesn't matter if their students are virtual or at campus, they can all still participate. The difference is they may still have to come to campus to participate. So for example, it's really hard to be on the football team without being on the field and being with the football team. So for that period, you would actually come and participate in football or choir or band or whatever, tennis, whatever's happening, and then you could go back home or whatever. And we're doing that, you know, we really debated a lot about whether or not we were going to do that, because many schools are not allowing that to happen. The reason we decided to allow that flexibility is because at any moment, any one of us could be quarantined. And we don't know who that's going to be, when it's going to be, and it's beyond our control. And so we didn't want to penalize our students because they're making a cognitive choice now to be virtual. Even the face-to-face kids may be forced to go virtual. And so we know that we're going to be moving in and out of these systems frequently. And so we didn't want to interrupt our students' opportunities. And that was the reason why we decided that. So yes, they can, but they will probably still have to come to school during those periods, if that makes sense. I hope it does. All right, other questions?
I have one question.
Sure.
Our doctor is in Amarillo.
Mm-hmm.
So say my son has an appointment and I need to pick him up at 9 o'clock. We're not going to be able to come back for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Is he allowed to go on his computer when we get home, like at 4, and finish his assignments so that he doesn't lose that day of learning?
Yes, that is one of the flexibility things that I absolutely love as a parent. So he doesn't get behind. He is present as long as he engages in every one of those classes. Does that make sense? Even if he does it at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, it's that 24-hour window.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions?
Yes, I've got another one.
Sure.
I was curious about there's so many more expectations that are being put on the teachers and administrators and whatnot, and we realize that we can't be there to help you like we would normally want to be able to do. What is it that we can do as parents to be involved in school besides just communication to assist you in all the things that you need to do?
Thank you. I really appreciate that. You know, we are working, and Ms. Williamson can talk about maybe a little bit more about this later, but we're working on some ways for our parents in our community to still have some genuine experiences with us. Some of that's going to be through social media, but I honestly think the best way to help and for everybody to help each other is to keep things to where it's not, you know, I don't know if you've seen this Facebook poster out there, but there's this kindergarten teacher and she's talking about her face shield and she says something fun about, I look like an astronaut. She's making it be fun and comfortable. And what I've learned is that our students, our children, will respond to all the problems that we're facing just like their parents do and just like their teachers do. So if we respond with how this is fun, how this is an opportunity, yeah, you can't do it this way, but look, you can do it this way, their anxiety will go down. So I think the most that people can help us right now is helping the anxiety go down, helping that comfort stay there, and knowing that this is going to be okay. It's really going to be okay. We're just going to have to work together. And that's support. And sometimes support, yes, having the extra hands is very helpful, but sometimes the support is just knowing that you're going to give us some grace and that we're going to extend that grace to you. And so that may not answer your question, but I think to begin with, that's what we need from each other, really.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
You bet. All right. Anything else? That's why we're here. Don't hesitate.
So Dr. Larkin, there's one question that I'm working on answering. I haven't replied yet, but I don't want you to
Okay.
end without them having the answer. Can a student still participate in extracurricular activities if they choose remote learning? I'm posting the answer, but if you would please address that.
Okay. I did address it, but I think you were
Okay.
deep into answering another question. So I did.
Okay,
And yes,
then good.
okay. Yeah, I know there's a lot going on. But yes, they can. Okay, the question here I see, what time can they be dropped off in the mornings? It's gonna be, we're setting our schedules. We're opening school a little bit earlier and we're keeping school open a little bit later than normal. And part of that is to have more transition time, to not have lots of people. So all of those drop-off pickup times will be communicated by your campus as we get closer to school.
Thank you.
You bet. Anything else?
Am I understanding correctly, if a student is on campus and they end up being quarantined because they were around someone who tests positive or because they show symptoms, that they can immediately switch to the distance learning? Is that one of the advantages of the learning management system?
Absolutely.
They won't miss any time or anything while they're quarantined?
That's correct. And that's the main reason we're doing this, is because it doesn't matter where your child is geographically, whether they're in the seat at school, they're at home in bed, or they're in the car going to the doctor. They can not miss instruction.
Okay. And so are all the lectures that the teachers give recorded? Because you said that they don't have to follow their schedule and be online during their specific time as if they were in school. So all of the lectures or whatever the teachers do is going to be online and can be accessed during any 24-hour period? I mean, during that 24-hour period?
Yeah, and it's going to depend on the age of the kids and what that learning looked like. So for hybrid learning, which is what we're talking about, it's the term in the education pedagogy and the teaching style of what we're doing and how we design lessons. Some of the content is going to be, the teacher is going to have something recorded and they'll put that in there. Or some of it may be a pre-recorded video from another provider. So I don't know if you're familiar with Khan Academy or not.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
Khan Academy does tons of great things, and they've got some more access for teachers right now where they're explaining, so say you have a student in algebra and they're learning slope. Well, they have a video on how this person is explaining slope. Well, our teachers right now, they use those videos in the real classroom at school. They'll show that video to the class, and then the kids that got it the first time start working, and then the kids that didn't, then the teacher does another extra layer, those kind of things. So it's going to depend on what they're teaching, how they're teaching it, how difficult the concept is. Sometimes it will be in written form, sometimes it will be an inside video, sometimes it will be an outside video, sometimes it'll be a custom-made video or a custom-made text. It's going to vary. But everything you need to access the content and the learning is going to be housed in the system.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
MJ. On the distance learning, so just to clear my brain,
That's okay.
they can come in at the correct times or the start time, and be with like the in-class students learning kind of side by side, and
Right.
or they
No, we don't have that feature. That's that live feature. We don't have
Okay.
the technology capacity or the bandwidth, if you will, on our Wi-Fi.
Mhm.
So what you're thinking about is like maybe chiming in remotely live in class and seeing all that happening as it's happening. We don't have that. So this would be where the information is in the learning management system. And so say, what grade are your kids?
Kindergarten, 3rd, and 6th.
Okay, so say you have your 3rd grader. So your 3rd grader gets up and they're ready for school at 8 o'clock, just like everybody else. Well, they get on their learning management system. It won't be live, real time. The teacher won't be talking to them. Well, so it might be a video, that might be something they have to read, they might have to do some writing, do an activity, they may have to, teacher say, okay, go find this in your backyard and come back and describe it or something like that. So they'll do that, but then say 3rd grade, at 10 o'clock every day in 3rd grade, there will be a teacher opening up a Zoom just like this. It won't be a Zoom meeting, it'll probably be a Google Meets or a Microsoft Teams meeting, but it's the same concept. And so at 10 o'clock, your student will go on and they'll click onto that link, and then a teacher will come up, a 3rd grade teacher, and they will be there for if you have questions, or they can talk to the student about anything that they have. Say that it's your kindergartner and you're struggling, like they're not reading the way I want them to. What are some things that I can do? And that teacher can talk to you about that. Or they can have a conversation with that student and say it's a concept that your student didn't quite understand. And quite frankly, if I had to teach my child pre-cal, I would be in a bind. And so I would have to need them to get on with that teacher and figure that out so they can have a little mini lesson. So that part is live and it is every day. But it happens for 1 hour every day for the elementary grade levels. And then when you get to the secondary level, it's 1 hour every day for the content areas.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I just want to make for sure we wouldn't be like missing if there was a live. I figured there might not be.
No.
I just want to make for sure we weren't going to be doing that. So
yeah, and that's a great clarifying question. I'm really glad you asked that.
I have one more question.
Yes.
I have September birthdays and I have littles, and so I was wondering. There's no bringing cupcakes part. There's holidays. That's kind of exempt for right now.
For
right?
right now, just for right now, we got to get started and see how all this is going to work. And I have September birthdays too, my daughter, and so I get that. I totally get that, and that is one of those.
I just didn't want to be the mom that didn't do something.
I know, I totally get that. But again, I think there are some things that we can do. I think our teachers still want to bring that happiness and that joy, and celebrating a student's birthday is such a big deal. And so we may not be able to bring in all these people and bring in all this stuff, but that doesn't mean we still can't make your child feel special. So please communicate with your teachers, and we can do some stuff with Facebook Live. There's some things that we can do. Again, it's just going to look a little bit different. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You bet. All right, anyone else? Okay, well, I think that's it for this session. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to visit with us. You had some really great questions. We're going to add some of those to our frequently asked questions document. And I see Dr. Barton nodding her head. We're going to get right on that and update our website with that information. If you think of something else after the call, which I always do, feel free to email us. You can email Karen Linder. She's the one that sent you the link for this Zoom, or you can also, we're still using our Pampa ISD info at pampaisd.net email, or you can give us a call at 669-4700. We want to answer your questions. Every time we have a conversation, we figure something else out, and so we appreciate that very much. You guys stay safe, and we will see you soon.